Professor Cotler, I would like to express my gratitude. You were my MP. I came to your office in 2006, and you were among the first politicians in Canada who didn't ask who is Uyghur. You knew what our situation, and I would like to express my gratitude and for your support in moving forward with recognition of Uyghur genocide in 2022. Thank you very much for your help. My question is, we know the UN is a complete failure right now. We have a permanent member Security Council of five, and two of the states, Russia and China, are actively perpetrating genocide. So we need a complete restructuring of the UN system. And I think this echoes the majority participants here. So what would be our first step to restructure, to reorganize this system? We need one, but we need a new one. So what would be our first step to do? How do we approach? Where do we begin?
Thank you for that question. I used to say when I was an MP that the United Nations is part of our DNA. International law is a centerpiece of our identity. Human rights must be an organizing idiom of our Canadian foreign policy. The combating of mass atrocity and genocide must be a priority as a matter of principle and policy. But I regret to say that the United Nations has been failing us. And I still remember, and I'm just using one example, but I'd like it to be appreciated in a generic sense. But I remember in 2004 when I was Minister of Justice and Attorney General, and I met with the then UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, who made the combating of genocide something he spoke of as a priority. But then he said to me something at the time. He said that a United Nations that does not put the combating of anti-Semitism at the forefront of its agenda is a United Nations that has betrayed its past and forfeited its future. Well, it is not only the combating of anti-Semitism that is not at the forefront of its agenda. It's the combating of mass atrocity and genocide that is not at the forefront of its agenda. And that is a United Nations, when that occurs, that in fact is betraying its past and forfeiting its future. As we approach now the 50th anniversary of the United Nations Charter, amidst the drumbeat of evil, where the United Nations was established to prevent aggression and the mass atrocities therefrom. So at this point, I think that we have to rethink, and that has been mentioned, the whole question of the veto power. Reference was made to the increased use that could be made of the United for Peace resolutions as referenced earlier, and the ways to get around the veto power of the axis of evil being present on the UN Security Council in the countries of China and Russia, themselves involved in mass atrocities constitutive genocide, as we've seen. So we have, with regard to the UN Security Council, a kind of ongoing culture of impunity built into the veto. And so we have to address and redress the role of the Security Council. We have to expand the role of the Security Council to take in countries of the global South. Reference has been made to that, but we have a situation where the global South is not properly represented in the Security Council. So we need a whole rethink. And I would like to hope that Canada, embarking now on an election and in a new foreign policy after that election, will make United Nations reform and reform of the Security Council and the United Nations as what it was intended to be, an effective bastion against mass atrocity and genocide, an effective bastion for the protection and the prevention of genocide. That is something that we have to have as a first priority for our new government, whichever that government may be.
Have time for one more question. That's okay?
Yes.
First of all, thank you for this wonderful and insightful kind of remarks on the question of human rights, genocide prevention, and so on. I just want to add to my friend's question. I'm not sure if you are aware of the genocide not recognized, committed on the people of Tigray, which is a northern part of Ethiopia. And more than 1 million people were killed, more than 300,000 girls and women were raped and got raped. The Security Council met, I think, more than 14 times, but because of the Russia and China reached power, no result was passed. So what do you think? And also we are hearing now that Canada is cooperating with Ethiopia military cooperation. And this for us is really very difficult to understand, to comprehend why the person who has committed genocide reward him with this kind of collaboration. It doesn't make sense to us. So what do you think? What is your take on this issue? Thank you.
I'm glad you brought that up because I should have referenced it in my remarks. I've been a long time counsel for Ethiopian Jews to try to secure their recognition and status within the Jewish world, etc. And it happened when I was appearing before the Supreme Court of Israel on behalf of them in a case, and also on behalf of other African asylum seekers, that a group of Ethiopian Jews in Israel asked to meet with me. I thought they wanted to meet with me on the plight of Ethiopian Jews, and no, all of them said to me that we've come here to meet with you, not on the plight of Ethiopian Jews. We know you know about that. We've come to meet with you to warn about what is happening with the people of Tigray. And they asked me to go back to Canada and to warn our government that what was happening was an ongoing set of mass atrocities and genocide in Tigray. And then they said, and worse, the Canadian government is, however, inadvertently even collaborating in that regard. So instead of sounding the alarm on what is happening in Tigray, they are being silent. I have to tell you that I did come back and I did bring it up to the Canadian government, and I've brought it up since and mentioned it in my conversations with recently with our foreign minister, but we have not yet seen the necessary initiatives, the necessary action. It is one of yet another of the forgotten genocides. One of the worst things, one of the worst horrors of genocide prevention and protection and prosecution and action is, the silence with respect to genocide. It's astonishing that in the 21st century, we should be witnessing the second genocide in Sudan, so that the first genocide, and when I was a parliamentarian, I formed an all-party coalition, Save Darfur coalition. But the first genocide was a genocide foretold. We knew, but did not act there as well. That's an astonishing thing happened, if I may. I don't want to take too much time. When I was a member of parliament, I formed this all party to protect against genocide in Sudan and Darfur. When I became a Minister of Justice, astonishingly, the government told me that I could not speak of Darfur because I had been invited to go to Stockholm at that point, early on in my tenure as Minister of Justice in 2004, for a conference on the prevention of genocide. And my theme was preventing and acting upon the genocide in Sudan. But yet my own government, of which I was a member, told me I couldn't speak about it. And I said, well, I spoke about it when I was an MP. How does it stop becoming a genocide now that I'm a minister? Well, I was told that the government has not yet determined that it's a genocide, and so you can't speak of it. Well, to sum it up, I undertook at the time, and Paul Martin was a great prime minister, that yes, I would speak of the genocide in Darfur at this conference on genocide in Stockholm in 2004. I would acknowledge that the government had not yet determined that it was a genocide and would not yet act upon it, but that we would, I would hope, do so. And we then did, somewhat belatedly, but nonetheless recognize that genocide foretold. And now it's a second genocide in Sudan. In fact, this is the country that, as we meet, has more displaced people than any country in the world, that is experiencing, as we meet, the worst humanitarian catastrophe in the world. It's almost as if Africa is off our radar screen, because we have the horrors in Tigray and we are not even alert to it. We have the second genocide in Sudan and we are not undertaking the necessary actions with regard to this greatest humanity, and I can go on. So that's why I said earlier that we have to involve the global South more in decision making, and the importance also that was referenced of using regional initiatives in that regard, and work more with the African Union to combat what is happening in Tigray, to combat what is happening in Sudan, to ensure that Africa is on the radar screen of our foreign policy. And regrettably, we have not yet made the responsibility to protect in all its manifestations one that both reaches into Africa, as it is also and must be and be returned to our global radar screen for action. So yes, this is at this point, it's a longer answer to a much shorter issue, but Tigray is a looking glass into the importance of Canada being more involved in Africa, into a looking glass in our involvement in Africa, to the horrors of what is taking place now in Sudan, to the importance of making the Canada-African relationship a priority in our foreign policy, and all this as part of our revival of the responsibility to prevent and protect doctrine, and all this as part of our priority of establishing an office for the prevention of genocide, appointing a special envoy for that purpose, and having Canada be at the forefront of the combating of mass atrocity and genocide in what is horrifically an ongoing age of mass atrocity and genocide.
Thank you once again for your address, and your insights are very powerful for our communities and for those fighting for human rights. You've been an inspiration for Canadians and human rights advocates for a very long time. So again, we thank you so much for your time and participation, and we hope to connect again in the future.
Thank you.